What is happening, everybody? It is Trey here, joined again by Sean with another great edition of Reactions to the Classics. Today we are up to our next installment in our ongoing Beatles series where we're going through chronologically and reviewing each album, and today we're up to their fourth album, Beatles For Sale. We've heard, a couple songs pretty much just 8 days a week off of this. Right. Everything else was pretty new to us, so if you're new to the channel, guys, what we do here at Reactions to the Classics is react to classic, highly acclaimed albums, and most of the time it's the first time we've ever listened to it, and we do a detailed track-by-track review. So if that sounds like something interesting to you, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. You will not be disappointed. And all that upfront stuff to say, let's get into some quick facts.
All right, Trevor, this album was released in December of 1964 in the UK. 8 of the 14 songs came out the next year in North America on Beatles 65. 14 songs, it's only 33 minutes long. It was the fourth of the UK albums of the 12, as you mentioned. The most interesting thing about that, which is really insane, it's the fourth album to come out in 21 months. With that, they started recording it a month after Hard Day's Night came out. And they recorded over a 3-week period during breaks on their concert tour in the UK. Just on days off, they would come into the studio, record. A lot of the songs weren't even written yet. They had to write them in the studio. And because of that, we're kind of doing a little rewind here. Hard Day's Night had all Lennon McCartney stuff. This one has 8 originals, 6 covers. That's why, because the lads from Liverpool, they just didn't have any time left.
A bunch of stuff obviously going on. I noticed from the get-go that this had more introspective lyrics.
It's different.
This was darker.
Yes.
And not as upbeat as, Please Please Me with the Beatles was.
Definitely.
The lighter tones that you're used to with these early Beatle days are starting to wane here. And that was an interesting mark of the album. The album also reflected the twin influences of country music and Bob Dylan, whom the Beatles met in New York in August of that year.
All right, Trey, we're up to the first track. It's No Reply by Lennon. It is a banger. Love this song. He wrote it, shows his mature songwriting. It's about a girl who he sees, he's dating her, he loves her. He sees her go into her apartment. He knows that she's dating another guy, tries to call her. There's no reply. So he knows she's lying. This song was originally written for someone else who Brian Epstein managed as well, the Beatles manager. That guy didn't record it, so the Beatles said, wait a minute, we'll take it back. They were desperate for content, and so I'm so glad they did, because it may be the best song on the album.
Yeah, no, you can notice as soon as it starts that the thematic shifts from their earlier albums, and I just thought it was great. It left me wanting more because it was only 2 minutes, 16 seconds, and this was just an excellent way to start off the album. Then we go into the second song and another Lennon-led track, I'm a Loser, yet again starting off on a more depressing note that you wouldn't expect from the Beatles, and this again marked kind of Lennon's introspective nature, just talking about he's a loser and in relation to this girl that that's kind of gone out of his grasp. So again, I really enjoyed this one. I thought the vocals here were really strong, really kind of catchy, even though the lyrics themselves were more depressing. The song was kind of upbeat.
Yeah, and I think Lennon just really brings it. Paul later had said that he thought that John had just written this because they were listening to a lot of country music, and it's all about sad stuff. And he realized later it was kind of autobiographical, and he really admired John for being honest kind of about how he felt. All right, Trey, we're up to Babies in Black. Very similar to the last two songs. This is Lennon and McCartney. They sing it together. And interesting on this one, they sang into the same microphone in the studio to give that close feeling. You can really hear them in sync.
Yeah, and the interesting part about this song is some people speculate it was written about their friend and photographer in Germany, Astrid.
Yeah, in Hamburg.
Yeah, exactly, who was going out with the former Beatle, Stewart, and he passed away in '62, and so this is kind of saying them, Babies in Black and I'm Feeling Blue, so kind of like a sad tone to it with Stewart's passing and Astrid probably obviously being devastated by that. But all in all, I thought it was a great song. It's interesting that they started this album off with 3 songs in a row that were very melancholy.
And also interesting on what it's about, because it's really one of their first songs that's deeply personal.
Yeah, exactly. Then that takes us into the first cover, Rock and Roll Music, led again by Lennon here, and this is from Chuck Berry's 1957 hit Berry, huge influence on the Beatles.
Very much. All these guys early on, they have a lot they owe to Chuck Berry.
Yeah, and they even performed this a lot in Hamburg in their early days, so bringing it here all these years later in '64, and this was my favorite cover by far on the entire record. Just the energy Lennon provides, man. Oh, I just wanted to get up and get rocking, no pun intended.
Yeah, he would really bang this one out. Very good choice. This is another example. You said a lot of these covers they were playing in Hamburg back in the early 60s because they didn't have time to find anything. They didn't have time to even learn new covers. They just busted out what they knew, but this one comes highly recommended. All right, next up we have Sir Paul is finally getting on the board and his first solo vocal, I'll Follow the Sun. And he actually reflects on this song and says he wrote it when he was 16. So pretty interesting and pretty good for a 16-year-old.
No, I was just about to say that bringing something so young whenever they're so popular now is kind of a neat little thing, a neat little caveat in there. And I thought this was a nice, just laid-back, chilled song. I thought this was a good effort by McCartney here and a good just talking about how, well, I'm going to kind of leave this girl because I'm just going to follow the sun. Sorry to whoever he's leaving here, but
I'm kind of out,
hey, we'll see you. And that takes us into another cover, this one written by Roy Lee Johnson and Lennon's on lead vocals, Mr. Moonlight.
Trey's all-time favorite Beatles song.
Not quite, man. You know, I know a lot of fans pan this song as one of the worst Beatles songs.
Yeah, many critics have called it the worst in their entire catalog.
I don't know if I'd necessarily go that far, but it's definitely not on par with the other tracks that we just had on this album, especially a Rock and Roll Music, the other cover we had. And I don't know, something musically was off. It had an organ.
It has an organ in it. Yeah, it has some different kind of instruments.
Instrumentation in here was a little unique, but it just didn't really mesh well for me.
It's like the previous cover, Rock and Roll Music. They were playing this thing in Hamburg a lot, so they just popped it out. There are some people who believe, some critics who believe, that they knew this was bad, that they played it straight, but that because of the way it's kind of instrumented out and how John's just into it, his vocals really get on it.
For real.
That they kind of knew it wasn't very good, and they didn't care. They liked covering more obscure stuff. All right, Trey, now we come up to a little medley, another McCartney-led song, Kansas City, Hey Hey. Hey, hey.
Not a lot of deep lyrical content to look at here.
No, and it's something that Little Richard had done years ago, and so they played this in Hamburg as well, and it's fine. I mean, the Kansas City Royals baseball team still plays this song after they win a game when everybody's actually in the arena. It was okay for me. I'll tell you one thing, though, when you listen to it, you cannot tell it's Paul.
No, that's another good display of how wide Paul's vocal range was.
Yeah, they say that Lennon kept cheering him on and kind of taunting him when they were recording. Oh, you can do better than that.
I can just imagine that John over there, just because you know how John could be.
Yeah, just getting him just to get more and more. And so, I mean, it's a good vocal performance.
Yeah, it's a good vocal performance. Not my favorite on the album by any means, but it's just a fun little pop song. All right, then we start off the B-side with, I would say, the most famous song on here by far, 8 Days a Week.
By far.
And this is interesting because it's both Lennon and McCartney on here.
Right.
And this starts with a fade in, which is one of the first times ever in pop music that a side in a song started with a fade in.
Yeah, very, very innovative.
Yeah, so, and that's kind of neat because it builds up just for about 5 seconds and then you go boom, right into the song. And this was probably my favorite track on the entire record, or one of, right up there. And I just enjoyed it, man. Very catchy.
This one's interesting because they didn't like the song. They never did like the song. They never performed this song live ever.
Yeah, that's shocking.
Lennon actually called it lousy, but I think it's a great song. All right, Trey, next up we have Words of Love, another cover. This is Lennon and McCartney. It's a Buddy Holly song. Both Lennon and McCartney loved him. They were heavily influenced by him. Harrison comes in and adds a little bit vocally on this. And they try to play this one straight. They try to do it exactly like Buddy did it. They didn't make any alterations.
Yeah, and I thought this was a good track. A little bit forgettable for me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I thought it was solid. And what you notice here with the covers, they're choosing some heavy hitters. We got Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Buddy Holly. So you could tell that their influences were had a big impact on them.
The fathers of rock and
Yeah,
roll.
and they chose some good ones. Then we go into our Ringo Starr performance of the album, Honey Don't. And
His
this,
second favorite Beatles song of all time.
again, not quite. I wasn't really feeling this one, but it had some hilarious moments.
I mean, it was written by Carl Perkins
Yeah.
like years before.
And George Harrison, huge Carl Perkins fan, and George has some great guitar work in here.
Yeah,
he does throughout the entire album, even though he doesn't have a bunch of vocal performances here.
Right.
That guitar work is excellent, man. And there's just a couple hilarious moments in here
great, man.
where Ringo's like going. I can just imagine Ringo with that goofy.
He's finally
grin.
up front, guys.
Yeah.
He finally gets to do something.
With that goofy grin. He's like, "Oh, rock on for Ringo one time, George." And
He does it twice.
oh,
Yeah,
it's like that almost makes the song good for me.
it elevated the
Yeah.
song in my eyes, because when I first heard it, I'm like, man, this is bad. But then when I hear Ringo popping in and talking, I'm like, yeah, man, I can live with this one.
It takes us right into every little thing. This is, again, Lennon with McCartney.
Yeah.
And this was interesting because it had a different sound to it, Sean. You had the timpani drum in there. It was kind of noted as one of the first times the Beatles used non-rock instrumentation.
Yeah, they did it a few times on here, usually with Ringo rocking it. I think this song's interesting, too, because it's primarily written by McCartney, but the primary vocals are by Lennon.
By
That was
Lennon,
really
exactly.
rare for them. Paul on this song once again had to do the high harmonies because of John's voice deteriorating. He couldn't get there. Next up, we're I Don't Want to Spoil the Party. This is Lennon with McCartney.
I thought this was great. Thematically, I thought it went very well with the first three songs.
It did. I was surprised
on
it
this-
almost wasn't number 4.
Yeah, I think it just kind of reflects, again, what Lennon's later lyrics would be, talking about some alienation, isolation. Pretty much the story goes that this guy's at this party, he's not having a good time. His girl stood him up.
Yeah, didn't show up, and he realized it. He
Yeah.
said, I'm just going to go ahead and leave so I don't spoil
Yeah,
the
I'm going to
party.
leave and spoil the party. And this could have been a little autobiographical as well. During the time, you think Beatlemania, everybody's so hyped and crazed, and they're just going from town to town. It's like, okay, we're part of the party. Lennon might have been, he was initially kind of the lead man, the jokester a little bit. Now it's not as fun anymore, but
Wow.
I'm just going to take a step back so everybody else can have their fun. Then we go into the final McCartney-led track, What You're Doing, and man, this was one of my favorites actually on the entire record.
Yeah, it really grew on me.
Yeah, I added this one to the playlist for sure, and this is interesting because McCartney combines a single 2-syllable word with 2 1-syllable words. So make sure to go to Genius and read the lyrics on this, and you can kind of see the scheme we're talking
And
about.
just that little touch, man, that these guys, I mean, I can't overemphasize what geniuses John and Paul were.
Now we're up to the album's closer and the only Harrison-led vocal track here, Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby. And this is another cover of a Carl Perkins song.
It is.
Harrison, as I said earlier, a huge fan of him. And I'm going to say that this was one of the better Harrison-led tracks that he's done up to this point. I thought his vocal sounded better here.
Yeah, he's getting confidence. And I mean, as much as these guys were playing live, it was an insane amount, and recorded 4 albums in 21 months. It's kind of a crash course in getting better in your musical abilities. I think, you said he was a lifelong fan of Carl Perkins. One of the interesting things in the song, they use a technique called the Steed effect. They also use it on Paperback Writer a couple years later. But it almost makes George sound like he's singing in a tin can. You have to really listen for this. It's the way they messed with echo chambers and slowing down the magnetic tape loop. And gets technical, who cares? But it does have a different sound to it, and I think that really helped George out here. That brings us up to our favorite tracks. For me, No Reply, I'm a Loser. I mean, I'm not, I don't think, and 8 Days a Week.
Yeah, I'd echo those along with the McCartney-led track, What You're Doing. I thought that was really, really solid. And cover-wise, I thought rock and roll music was pretty
By far,
awesome,
yeah, that was
too.
by far the best cover. All right, well, now we're up to it. What'd you give the overall album?
I'm going to stay at a nice 7.5 here. I thought this was better than With the Beatles, just by a little bit for me, but it wasn't up to par with A Hard Day's Night or Please Please Me. All that to say, still a solid record.
Yeah, I'll give it a 7.75, just go a touch higher than you. That's definitely not their best effort, but, and I graded it what I thought it should get, but then also stepping away from that, we just have to realize it's the 4th album in 21 months, and it's about to get real. We got Help next, and then we're going to start down this run of just unbelievable songwriting, unbelievable vocal performances, and unbelievable musicianship, just innovative stuff, so I can't wait for it.
Well, Sean, I guess that will do it from us today.
That's a wrap.
Another Beatles one done and in the books. We still have a lot of albums left though, so
8 more Beatles albums.
I'm very, very excited for that. And be sure, like I said earlier, guys, hit that big red subscribe button. We upload twice a week in a variety of genres, so there's going to be something for everyone here. And be sure to comment below. Let us know, what did you think of Beatles for Sale? What is your favorite track on here? And
hey, there's got to be somebody out there who thinks Mr. Moonlight's their favorite all-time
yeah,
Beatles, right?
exactly.
You got to be out there. Comment below.
But yeah, that'll do it. As always, Sean, really appreciate it. Happy
pleasure.
listening, my friends, and we will see you next time.